Blessed are the eyes that see what you see. For I tell you, many kings and prophets have desired to see what you see, and have not seen it. To hear what you hear, and have not heard it. I thank you, Father, for hiding these things from the learned and the wise, and revealing them to the innocent and the simple.
There was more heavy fighting today along the Turkey-Syria border, but it's not going quite the way the U.S. wants. Holly Williams on the dilemma posed by America's friends, who are foes.
It began with Turkey launching an offensive against ISIS last week, sending tanks and Syrian rebel fighters over its border and into the town of Jarablus. Turkey's a close US ally, and the operation was backed up by Turkish and American airstrikes. But after an easy victory against ISIS, the Syrian rebels headed further south to take on Kurdish fighters. Turkey views the Kurdish group as terrorists, but the Kurdish fighters are backed by the US. They work together with American special forces.
It's an ISIS fighter.
And we've seen them up close, stripping away territory from ISIS. So now two US-backed groups, who are both supposed to be fighting Islamic extremists, are instead clashing with each other. This video appears to show members of the Kurdish group captured and humiliated by rebel fighters. America's special envoy for the fight against ISIS, Brett McGurk, tweeted today that the clashes are unacceptable, calling on all sides to stand down.
Now to tensions rising in the Persian Gulf after a close encounter at sea, a U.S. Navy patrol boat firing 3 warning shots at an Iranian vessel.
This is the most aggressive behavior by the Iranians in recent memory. The U.S. had 2 coastal patrol boats in the Persian Gulf approached by 3 Iranian vessels that were crisscrossing the bow of the U.S. boats at high speed. I know from having been on U.S. ships in the Gulf that there are escalating warnings that are given, radio calls, loudspeakers, horns, flares. The Iranians finally veered away, but later returned, aiming head-on at the American vessels, coming within 200 yards, and that's when the Americans fired those 3 warning shots from a .50 caliber weapon into the water, and the Iranians finally turned around.
Tensions have increased between Iran and the U.S. in recent days, despite an overall improvement in bilateral relations. Serious differences still remain over a number of issues, including Iran's ballistic missile program, the Syrian conflict, and anti-terrorism efforts in Iraq.
Russia has deployed troops and Marines to the Crimean Peninsula amid an ongoing large-scale snap drill. The Russian armed forces have started a week-long military drill involving 3 of the country's 4 military districts. The drills aimed at checking their ability to beef up forces and defend Russia's interests amid growing security threats. Tensions between Russia and Ukraine have been escalating since early August, when the Russian Federal Security Bureau said it had thwarted a series of terrorist attacks in Crimea. They said the attacks were masterminded by Ukrainian military intelligence. Kiev denied the accusation.
Violence has erupted in Indian-controlled Kashmir, where security forces have used force to end renewed protests by the pro-independence residents. Indian forces fired live ammunition, shotguns, and tear gas at protesters who responded by hurling stones in the city of Srinagar. Earlier, authorities lifted a 52-day curfew in Kashmir except the town of Pulwama and some parts of Srinagar. The curfew was imposed after numerous protests took place in early July. The demonstrations were sparked by the killing of a pro-independence leader by Indian troops. Nearly 70 Kashmiris have been killed and thousands more injured in a crackdown since July 9th, when tension escalated in the region. This is the worst violence seen across Kashmir in years. Most Kashmiris want an end to the Indian rule and favor independence or a merger with Pakistan.
We start this update in Yemen, where Islamic State has claimed responsibility for a suicide bombing at a local militia compound in the southern city of Aden. Yemeni officials say at least 65 people have been killed and dozens more wounded. A security official says the attacker drove a car into a gathering of new recruits. Security in Yemen has deteriorated since March 2015. That's when war broke out between the Shiite Houthi group, supported by former President Ali Abdullah Saleh, and the government backed by a Saudi-led Arab coalition. Extremists also have taken advantage of the chaos in Yemen to make gains in the south and the southeast.
Iran has deployed a Russian missile defense system at its underground Fordo nuclear facility. State TV trucks showed the trucks arriving at the location with missile launchers being aimed toward the sky. But Iran didn't say if the S-300 system is fully operational. Russia began delivering the system to Iran earlier this year under a contract signed in 2007. The delivery had been held up by international sanctions over Iran's nuclear program. Those sanctions have now been lifted. Critics say it's more proof that Iran plans to build nuclear weapons, even though Iran denies it.
South Korea says it is considering deploying nuclear submarines along its coastal borders. South Korean Defense Minister Han Min-soo says the military has not made a final decision on the deployment yet. Last Wednesday, Pyongyang test-fired a ballistic missile from a submarine. A range puts all of South Korea and possibly parts of Japan within striking distance. President Park Geun-hye has ordered her senior secretaries to prepare realistic countermeasures and maintain a punitive stance against the DPRK's nuclear weapons.
The UN humanitarian coordinator says the death toll from Saudi Arabia's 18-month-long war on Yemen stands at about 10,000. Jamie McGoldrick was speaking at a news conference in the Yemeni capital, Sana'a. He said the new figure is based on official information provided by medical facilities in Yemen. McGoldrick stressed that the toll might be even higher since some areas had no medical facilities and relatives there often buried their loved ones directly. The majority of the casualties are civilians. The report comes as Saudi Arabia continues its airstrikes on Yemen. 3 civilians lost their lives on Tuesday in a Saudi air raid on the Razed district of Sauda province. Riyadh launched attacks on Yemen in March 2015 aiming to bring back the country's former president to power.
The 10,000th Syrian refugee is about to land in the U.S. today. The Obama administration set a goal to welcome 10,000 refugees in America just 1 year ago. It's still a very small percentage of the total number of refugees fleeing the ongoing civil war in Syria, though.
The FBI is warning state officials to boost their election security in light of evidence that hackers targeted data systems in Arizona and Illinois. In a confidential flash alert, first reported by Yahoo News, the FBI's cyber division said it had advised states to scan their systems for specific signs of hacking. Officials described the hacker threat as credible and significant, an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. In Illinois, in July, hackers breached the State Board of Elections. The Washington Post reporting they put up to 200,000 personal voter records at risk, including voters' names, addresses, birth dates, and other personal information. In Arizona, hackers forced the state to shut down its voter registration system for nearly a week. Both breaches are the latest indication of possible Russian interest in U.S. elections and party operations. Earlier this year, hackers compromised the computers of the Democratic National Committee, producing embarrassing emails for the DNC on the eve of Hillary Clinton's nomination as the party's presidential candidate. Russian hackers have also managed to hack into the computers at the New York Times. The hacks are the latest example of potential cyber warfare against the U.S., something that threatens the U.S. military, businesses, and more, something the White House has acknowledged in the past.
This is a very serious matter. It does pose a significant threat, not just to the American people, but also to our national security and to our economy.
Now, the Obama administration is seeking to put more emphasis on developing cyber weapons to try to prevent such attacks and punish intruders into U.S. networks. Reuters reports the plan calls for elevating the stature of the Pentagon's Cyber Command for a unified command equal to combat branches of the military, such as the Central and Pacific Commands. The U.S. has already carried out cyber attacks against ISIS. So the hacking warning from the FBI is only the latest warning that the future of warfare won't be just on the battlefield and won't involve only the military. It will be carried out by computers and could cover every aspect of life.
As you've already understood, you are about to hear about a very exciting discovery, maybe even a momentous one.
A second Earth-like planet, just a mere 4.243 light-years away, has been discovered. A distance that would take the average human using current propulsion technology hurtling through space at 20,000 miles per hour, give or take 100,000 years to travel to, has quite possibly been discovered right in our own backyard in the habitable zone of a neighboring system known as Proxima Centauri. Dubbed Kepler 452b, the Earth-like planet is roughly 60% larger than Earth.
The temperature that you would have on the surface of this planet if there is no atmosphere is actually minus 40 degrees, which is not spectacular. But, of course, we all want this planet to have an atmosphere, and if it has an atmosphere, it is actually pushing up the temperature through the greenhouse effect above 0 degrees and in the liquid water habitable zone.
Of course, the vampiric elite of planet Earth are beside themselves with world-conquering glee. Mark Zuckerberg and his Russian internet billionaire counterpart, Yuri Milner, are hatching a plan to escape the confines of the earthbound hell pit the elite created and preside over for greener pastures.
But now we can transcend it. With light beams, light sails, and the lightest spacecraft ever built, we can launch a mission to Alpha Centauri within a generation.
Dr. Edith Weeks explains from the book titled Outer Space Development, International Relations and Space Law, although having been extremely successful, NASA is being constructed as incapable, as a failed government bureaucracy, indeed as somehow effeminate. In addition, there is a trend wherein private companies contracted with the government are gradually beginning to take over the business of space missions. These processes regarding space exploration, space travel are consistent with my argument that part of the hyper-privatization mandate is to transfer many of NASA's assets over to the private sector. Space missions to other celestial bodies, large and small, in the past were carried out exclusively by government entities.
Over the next decade, we will work with experts here at ESO and elsewhere to get as much information as possible about the Proxima Centauri planet, perhaps as noted, even including whether it might bear life. Yuri Milner, Stephen Hawking, and Mark Zuckerberg oversee our project.
It doesn't look like a space shuttle or Voyager. The ultimate spacecraft is going to be about the size of this, maybe quite a bit lighter, and having much more functionality.
In your estimation, what's the probability of finding intelligent alien life in the next 20 years and why?
The probability is low. Probably.
May they one day travel at the speed of light only to finally arrive on a planet inhabited by 50-foot-tall patriots.